Yeah, so the short version is that strength is the sum of your morphological, which is primarily size related adaptations. So the body can literally change in structure. And like I said, it's mostly the muscle getting bigger and therefore stronger. And there are neural adaptations. And most strength development is neural. Like if you do any type of study and you quantify the degree of adaptation, what's the biggest contributory factor, then you see that strength is mostly a neural phenomenon. It's only when you extrapolate it to the super long term that it becomes more of a size thing. Like when you look at powerlifters that are most likely capped out in every aspect, then you see, well, the only way to really get stronger at that point is you increase the size of the total engine. And even then it's a little bit unclear if it's the increase within the individual or if it's just that more genetically blessed individuals are stronger. So I think it's really good to keep in mind that you always have these two factors, broadly speaking. And therefore, when you're dieting, the neural factor in general, so basically assumption number 2, is neural factor should always be positive. So whenever you're doing any type of movement, there's going to be an improvement in the coordination of that movement. It can be small, it can be big. If you're doing a new exercise, it's going to be very big. If you're a novice, it's going to be super big. If you're first time in the gym and the first time you're doing a squat, it's going to be a massive neural component because your body's figuring out how to do it. If you've been bench pressing for 10 years, your PR hasn't changed in a long, long time, the neural component is going to be teeny tiny. At some point, I mean, theoretically, it can even become zero, but you see that even in powerlifters that have been training for years, they are still making gains at the same body weight. So the neural component is clearly trainable for a long, long, long time, just very incrementally at a certain point. So if you know that you're dieting, you're losing weight, and your strength is stable, and we assume that the neural component is positive, then that must mean that the morphological component is negative, and especially if weight's also decreasing. Therefore, it basically follows that if you're not gaining any strength, no caveat incoming after this, then you must be losing size because there's a morphological loss that's compensating for the neurological improvement. Now, I think where many people kind of become confused in that is what do you quantify as strength? So what I have in mind with strength is essentially the sum of all of the lifts in your program. That's like your total strength. And I think a lot of people think of it as like just that one exercise, like, oh, my bench press hasn't increased. Well, if your bench press hasn't increased and you've been training for 10 years with the bench press in your program the entirety of those 10 years, then of course that doesn't mean much that your bench press is still the same. It might even have been the same during most of your bulk. However, if the total sum of all of that strength is actually not increasing, so you've had some exercises, presumably, that you haven't been doing for 5 years straight, and if those are also none of them are increasing, then yes, I think the harsh reality is you are losing size. And I think also a lot of advanced individuals in general you don't want to accept the reality that when you are cutting, you are almost inevitably losing some size. Like if I cut to counter shape, I am losing muscle for sure. It's impossible to maintain. In fact, I would argue that for anyone who is at their natural muscular potential or even enhanced potential, but given a certain hormone dose, you will inherently lose some muscle when you lose a significant amount of fat because research finds that you can maintain more muscle at higher body fat percentages. That's where the finding comes from that the most muscular individuals on the planet are actually sumo wrestlers, not bodybuilders. And that seems to be the case because, well, when you have that enormous amount of fat, you can also hold an enormous amount of muscle. And even though the ratio is really poor, evidently, in sumo wrestlers versus bodybuilders, the total amount of muscle is still better. And they would not be able to maintain that. It's not like if a sumo wrestler cut down to counter shape, they would, crap on all the bodybuilders. So I think that's basically the message. And yeah, I do definitely believe that a lot of people are a little bit too optimistic with their diets. So they feel like, oh, I must be maintaining muscle. If you're maintaining strength, then surely I'm maintaining my muscle mass. Probably not.